you're also seeing people trot out their slogans at the wrong time. So one of the big things that happens in the United States is whenever there's a massacre of some sort, people immediately say that their thoughts and prayers are with the folks who were hurt, which is a way of expressing empathy. Aren't we told that in politics and in life, sympathy and empathy are good things? And if I say that I'm praying for people who just lost loved ones, that is my expression of care for them. And yet it has become a thing in the United States that if you say thoughts and prayers, what that really is a way of you avoiding the harder discussions about policy and rhetoric. There's only one problem. This was a massacre carried out at a mosque where people were legitimately praying because they wanted to be in consonance with something higher than themselves. That did not stop Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, very fresh and very face, from tweeting out, quote, "At first I thought of saying, imagine being told your house of faith isn't safe anymore. But I couldn't say imagine because of Charleston, Pittsburgh, Sutherland Springs. What good are your thoughts and prayers when they don't even keep the pews safe?" What the hell does she even mean by that? These were Muslims, religious Muslims, praying to Allah. They were there to pray. They were there to commune with something greater. What good are your thoughts and prayers when they don't even keep the pews safe? This is a fundamental misunderstanding of what religion does. Religion does not suggest that if you pray, you will be safer. Religion suggests that if you pray, you may become better because you're thinking about something greater than yourself. And then she tries to walk this absolute crap back. She says this is a time of great vulnerability for our communities. We must come together, fight for each other, and stand up for neighbors. Isolation, dehumanizing stereotypes, hysterical conspiracy theories, and hatred ultimately lead to the anarchy of violence. We cannot stand for it. Fine. Then she says this: thoughts and prayers is a reference to the NRA's phrase used to deflect conversation away from policy change during tragedies, not directed to the Prime Minister Ardern, who I greatly admire. Well, no, thoughts and prayers is not an NRA phrase. Thoughts and prayers is a phrase that is used by decent people all around the world for legitimately centuries. To suggest that thoughts and prayers is just a way to shirk responsibility for a gun control debate that you feel like having at this particular time is the blood's still on the pavement. Just horrifying. But of course, the whole thing is horrifying, and the reaction is horrifying. The truth is, every human being of decency is united on this. Everybody believes that this human piece of excrement should pay whatever is the ultimate price in New Zealand, and so should anybody who is associated with this act of absolutely evil terror. Everyone agrees on this stuff. And people who are trying to generate false division based on the fact that they don't like Trump, or they don't like guns, or they don't like environmentalism, whoever is trying to turn this into a political thing today, other than condemning the ideology of the terrorist, okay? The ideology of the terrorist is a white supremacist ideology. It is fully evil. It is fully evil to suggest that if a Muslim lives in your neighborhood, that Muslim deserves to die because they are a threat to your white majority. It is sheer, absolute sick garbage. It is, you can have questions about the nature of radical Islam. That is not the same thing as suggesting that a Muslim in your neighborhood is a terrorist who is supposed to be shot at a mosque. It's disgusting. And anybody who is suggesting today that white supremacism doesn't have victims is, of course, being ignorant of the reality of the modern world. It is just untrue. That sort of stuff should be condemned. The ideology of the killer should be condemned. Now, what is wrong is to extend that ideology to people who do not believe it. And so you see some people on the political left doing today, taking that ideology and saying, well, you believe that, don't you? No, typical mainline conservatives do not believe this stuff. They forcibly fight back against this stuff. Now, there's a reason that the same white supremacists on 4chan are not big fans of a lot of conservatives. I mean, again, this guy's manifesto itself said that he was not a conservative and didn't like conservatism because he felt it hadn't conserved. Okay, the fact is, white supremacy is indeed evil. We should all be front and forward in condemning the tribal politics of race. It's horrifying, and it has impact. We should. I legitimately don't understand why there's division on when this sort of stuff happens. I understand that people want to use flashpoints to push their particular politics. I understand that, but it does nothing but tear apart a civilization that is united on acts of evil like this sort of stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask once again a clarifying question. There is nothing preventing a member from showing up to a deposition. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So at any point, if we choose to show up to a deposition, we may. It's fully within our rights to do so.
That is correct.
So I think I agree in the spirit of personal responsibility and our responsibilities to here as members that we can show up to our jobs, and I don't believe we have to be forced or compelled to do so. And I also believe that 5 days, again, we are a responsive body, and I want us to communicate to the American public that we are a responsive body, that we are an efficient and effective body, and that I don't believe we need 5 days. You know, many members, I understand that many members are from different parts of the country, but very frequently we are put on 24-hour notices to show up for votes. And I believe that we can continue to be that effective and efficient body without requiring a long lead time. I know that my Republican colleagues do not like the bureaucracy and the clogging up of government going on and preventing the American public from having their services done as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
If the gentlewoman would yield.
Gentle lady, would you yield?
Yes.
I thank the gentlewoman for yielding. Mr. Chairman, I can tell you on all of this, at this particular point, we're all wanting to cooperate. Sometimes our schedules, you know, we're not just sitting around eating bonbons waiting for the call of anybody. It's truly, you know, there are complex scheduling, and that's why we all have schedulers to get this done. And I yield back. I thank the gentlewoman for
Thank you.
Pardon? Yes.
Yeah, sometime.
For a point and then a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here and helping us answer the fundamental question of whether we care about our sovereignty and the rule of law in our country. And unfortunately, I have the now cynical view that I'm not so sure we all agree on that we all value the rule of law and value the ability to manage our border effectively. A lot of questions have come up about the humanity of our policies, as they should. There's some rightful anger about family separation. But unfortunately, it's myopic because nobody ever talks about the other issues that we might have when it comes to our humanity. There was a young woman in my office yesterday. She's from Mexico. She's about 18 years old. She was taken across the border, kidnapped about 5 years ago. On the third attempt, because they were turned back twice by Border Patrol, on the third attempt they made it through, and she was brought to New York City where she was raped approximately 30 times a day for 5 years. I don't know why nobody talks about that kind of stuff. When I was at the border in McAllen, in one day, in one location, 16 kids came across with adults that were not their parents. Further questioning and follow-through led to a stash house with 54 people kidnapped inside in Houston. Nobody talks about that humanity. Those are direct results of the fact that our asylum laws are taken advantage of. That's a direct result of the fact that that woman in my office was allowed to walk straight across the border. Nobody stopped her. There's no wall, nothing. Would have been turned back otherwise and not been in New York City to suffer the absolute nightmare that she did. And then we get to the question of whether walls work. And this has been a really fun conversation over the last couple months. Do walls work? Madam Secretary, would you agree that there's three parts to security: personnel, technology, and barriers?
Absolutely.
Can you just take one of those away?
No, sir.
When I was down in McAllen and Brownsville, what we see is Brownsville has about 35 miles worth of barriers. And as a result, only 6% of the crossings in that sector take place because walls work. Would you agree with that?
Walls work, yes, sir, as evidence.
McAllen, about 1,000 people were crossing on some days because they don't have the infrastructure. Would you agree that the biggest difference between the McAllen corridor and the Brownsville corridor would be the physical barriers?
The wall system, yes, sir.
Been a lot of red herrings that have been thrown out there to argue these points. Drugs like fentanyl come through points of entry. Yes, we know. You would agree with that, right?
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with the conversation about whether we need barriers between points of entry?
It does not, because it's not an either or.
There's always the conversation about we just need more technology because then the border agents can just chase people around as we see, because we can sense them coming through. Is that the only solution, or do you need that plus barriers plus personnel?
We need all three. We also need the ability to detain and remove when there's no legal right to stay.
There's a point often made that the border crossings are the lowest in years. We had about 400,000 last year, although that's quickly on the rise, as you've noted, 76,000 just this last month. The point is often made that because it's lower than in the year 2000, that there's no crisis. Is that accurate? Is 400,000 a year a low number?
Sir, it's not. But again, if I could, respectfully, it's because of the flow. It's because these are families. It's because these are children. That is why it's a crisis. It's a terrible, horrific journey that they undertake.
And let's get to that. As these arguments are made against points that, frankly, we're not even making, you mentioned the children and why that's the nexus of this crisis. Why does that happen? Is it because of our asylum laws? Is it because of the fact that if you bring a child across the border, well, and I think as you mentioned this before, if you bring a child with you, it's your ticket into the United States. All you have to do is claim asylum. Would you agree that our asylum process is completely taken advantage of?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that if we were to put more resources at points of entry so that we could humanely bring people in and hear their asylum case, but not let them loose into the country, would that dramatically reduce these illegal crossings as well? Would that be part of the solution as well, to reform the actual asylum process?
Yes.